Hi everyone, my name is Barry Jenkinson. I'm the Asset Data and Sustainability Manager at Raven Housing Trust. And I'm just going to give you a small presentation today about how Raven Housing Trust have started their journey towards zero carbon 2050. First of all, I'll just give you a bit of an introduction to Raven. We've got about 7,000 properties, about 1,000 leaseholders, 6,000 we own. We're mainly located in Surrey with a few in West Sussex. We've got a split of 55% flats to 45% houses. Luckily, one high-rise building in Post Grenfell land is we're pretty lucky to have that, really. Typical sort of old council stock, mainly 50s and 60s and 70s build. Luckily, we don't have too many solid brick properties, and we've got an average SAP of 74, which is pretty good. Sort of what we've done so far, sustainability-wise, at Raven is probably similar to what a lot of other housing associations have done. We've sort of taken the low-hanging fruit, which is the cavity wall insulation and loft insulation. We've done a eco house. We've done some external wall insulation pilots. Currently, we have one at the moment doing work to about 10 blocks, where we're installing EWI to the ground floor of a property. It's using the Mauer system, which some of you may have heard of, which is being used on the Energy Strong solution as well. We did a pilot last year; it was really successful. So we're hoping the works that we're doing this year is successful as well. We've dabbled in air source heat pumps and biomass rather unsuccessfully. The biomass we ripped out. Air source heat pumps we've ripped out as well. Some of them, we've still got some, but nothing to do with the technology, just poor design. Maybe at the wrong time, it just wasn't for us at the time. Our biggest foray into renewables really has been solar, thermal and PV. We've got PV on about 10% of our properties. We dabbled in the rent a roof scheme, which has been a bit of a mixed blessing really. It's contributed to a very good SAT rating and reduced electricity costs for residents, but it's quite a hard contract to manage, shall I say. And communal electricity, we buy that in and we're 100% green at the moment. So that's where we are at the moment. Going forward towards 2050, well, why are we doing it? It's government legislation. The climate change in 2008, so we've got to be 100% better by 2050 as we were in 1990. So as well as it's something we should do, it's something we have to do. That's 30 years away, which seems a long time, but when you start breaking down the amount of properties you've got by the amount of years you've got and how much it's going to cost, that 2050 target, it doesn't seem too far away. Now, we thought we needed a plan, so what we did, we commissioned a consultant through our procurement vehicle, and we got on board Turner and Townsend, who are quite an experienced consultant in this field, and they've released a draft plan to me, which was hot off the press yesterday. So I'll just give you a few details about what they've said to us. As I said, if you bear in mind, we've got about 6,000 to 7,000 properties. They've said it's going to cost in the region of about 118 million pounds. There's about between a 15 and 30% increase on that for contract management, and that works out at about just over £20,000 a property. Again, you need to add about 15 to 30% on top of that for contract management works. So that's over the next 30 years. They reckon the average bill will fall by about £333 per property, and the average carbon would fall by about 1.89 tonnes. So it's not an unsubstantial amount of money. However, if you take into account your planned works over the next 30 years, such as roofs and windows and doors and heating, and also the gas servicing, because if we're taking gas out and putting air source heat pumps in, gas will no longer be needed. They worked out that we could save £50 million. Well, not save £50 million, but net that off, because we were going to spend that anyway. So in addition to what we're going to spend on planned works over the next 30 years, we'd have to spend an additional about 68 £68 million plus obviously the uplift for contract management fees, etc. The approach that they've suggested is a sensible fabric first approach, and it's based on adopting a minimum heat demand for all homes. They're basically saying that at the end of it, when we're looking at how successful this has been, is we will not be using a SAP approach. It will be a minimum heat demand approach. So if we can get that heat demand down to the lowest point possible, that will show how successful it's been. I'm just looking at my notes here because I said it's hot off the press quite recently, so I've just jotted a few notes down about that. And they're saying really the metric for success should be that, and it follows a key principle that we actually should avoid energy use and be efficient with it, rather than produce lots of green energy unnecessarily. So what that's saying is a fabric first approach, reduce the energy demand first of all, and then look at the heating. The three approaches they've suggested, because we asked them to look at all our stock, different archetypes, and certain measures aren't suitable for certain properties. And they've suggested three approaches, which is zero carbon home, passive house, and energy sprung. So the newer properties that we've built, because they've got quite good air tightness and insulation already, then the only thing we really need to do with that is replace the heating. You don't want to be, putting EWI on a new build. So we can do that just by the heating. But the older properties, that's going to call for something like energy sprung or passive house. So the consultant has gone through our properties and suggested how we're going to do it. The timetable they suggested is basically a pilot in the next year, and we would learn from that pilot, and then we would scale up over 2022, 23, 24 to year 25, and then from 25 onwards to 2050 we'd be doing about 250 units per year. So that should take us up to our total of 6,000 to 7,000 properties to get done. One of the key messages I'd like to leave you with is regarding the new builds. Is quite often these can be forgotten, and on this journey you need to get your development team on board, because there's no point retrospectively fitting all the zero carbon measures to older properties when at the same time your development team are building brand new properties which don't meet zero carbon. So it's important to get them on board. They've also suggested residents are important as well, that you need to get them on board right from the start throughout this journey. There's a lot more detail I could go into about comfort plans for energy sprung to sort of try and get some of this money back, and all different sorts of things. But it's really important, I think, and the final message I will leave you with really is that this is something that we've got to work together on. I mean, I had a Teams meeting with a chap called David Smith from the Southeast Consortium this week, and he was talking about they've built a framework of zero carbon contractors, and that's about to go live later this year. And something like the energy sprung, if you fitted that to a property at the moment, it would cost you in the region of about £80,000 per property, where in 5 to 10 years time that's going to come down hopefully to about £40,000 a property. So when you're procuring this contract, you've got to bear that in mind, that prices will probably get cheaper rather than more expensive. And for the smaller housing associations who don't have the economies of scale, working together and taking advantage of these framework opportunities is going to be really important. So that's the message I'd like to leave you with. But obviously that was quite a bit of a whistle-stop tour, to be honest. And as I said, this is hot off the press, so I'm just sort of taking it all in myself at the moment, really, about what was being suggested by a consultant. But I'm happy to answer any questions on a one-to-one basis. If you drop me drop me a line at my email there on the screen. I'll be happy to answer any questions, or I'll give you a call back if you prefer. But thank you for listening, and good luck in your journey.